You want to solve something in your life? If you have something that's like this massively compelling problem or issue or whatever, write down that you want the solution. Write it down before you go to bed. Write it down. I need the solution by morning. You'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go,
Lost everything. She's an indentured servant at a stone quarry. It's in the time of kings and queens, right? She lost her mother, her father, then her house was taken away from her, and she's an indentured servant. So she's lost all hope. She's lost all hope, and her life every day is about lifting heavy rocks from one place to another. And so she goes home one night exhausted, detached from everything because there's just nothing there anymore. She falls asleep.
never know it. He's the nicest guy on the planet. And what he cares about is you. He cares about taking care of the person that he's with at the time. He cares about how he can help them. He cares about what he can do to pour into them, especially if he feels like you're doing something to help make the world better, right?
Yeah.
Because that's really your mission.
Yes.
Your mission with Mark is to make the world a better place to live. Pursue living their life the way you and Mark live your lives.
Yeah.
This is the kind of success they'll have. This is the kind of joy they'll experience.
Yes, I think that's so true. So true, Mike. And I am so grateful for it. You know, I think one of our prayers every day when I pray is like, thank you for the awareness.
Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. Mike is passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
Crystal Dwyer Hansen, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I am super excited for our time together. And like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go up to today, and then we want to talk about this amazing book that you wrote, Ask. And then I want to talk with you about, there it is, baby. By the way, one of my favorite books ever. Absolutely one of my favorite books ever. And the first book that Mark and I, full disclosure, first book that Mark and I are going to write together is The Power of Questions.
He mentioned that. And I love that because you cannot talk about this topic enough.
You can't. You just can't. And so I'm super, super excited for our time together. And like I told you, I didn't sleep hardly at all last night.
I love that.
So hanging out with the Queen of Denmark, right? This is really a very cool thing. Thanks again for being here.
Oh, such a pleasure to be with you, Mike. And like I said, you know, Mark has said so many wonderful things about you and what you've done. So back to my childhood. Yes, I was born in Idaho Falls, Idaho. Grew up, I was one of 9 children, very unusual background, right? It's funny because my dad was a very successful attorney. He's passed now, but my mother insisted on growing these gigantic organic gardens.
Ooh.
And all the kids had to work in the gardens because my mom was very health oriented. And there's a reason for that. She actually had a grand mal seizure when she was pregnant with me. She goes to this is freaky, Mike. I mean, like my dad wakes up to hears this like weird hum. It's my mother. He's like, what is that humming sound? You know, and he touches her and her body is as stiff as this wooden desk. And so, you know, they called the ambulance. There was no paramedic in the day. Took her to the hospital. No one knows what's going on. She came out of it, fortunately. And then sent her to a neurologist in the town, just the next town over from us. Happens just to be that there's another woman, same number of months pregnant as my mother, also had a grand mal seizure.
Oh my goodness.
Very weird. So both seeing this one specialist that supposedly deals with this sort of thing. And it's interesting. I don't know if there's anything behind this, but we did live near, there was a nuclear power plant, you know, just outside of our town. Who knows? Like, is it some pulse that pregnant women, you know, couldn't handle or something? Who knows? So he basically sees my mom, says, you know, I don't really know what's wrong with you. Don't know why you had it, but take these pills for 2 years and come back and see me. So my mom's like really confused. And she goes home, calls my grandmother. And she's like, he wants me to take these pills for 2 years. And my grandmother, thankfully, said, don't you dare take those pills.
Wow.
She said, you have a baby in your womb. Those pills are going to pass to the baby. No one knew what it was.
Right.
Yes. She's like, there's a new naturopathic chiropractic doctor that moved into town one town north of my grandmother. So she said, I'm making you an appointment. Mom went there. Long story short, this Dr. Long, he gave her some gentle adjustments. He put her on these like healing machines. I mean, it was this German technology that he used, gave her some supplements. I'm born strong and healthy. Fast forward 8 years, I'm at my dance class. And I was taking ballet lessons with my sister, and my ballet teacher said her little boy walked through the door. He came home on a later bus, like a shorter bus, just honestly. And she said, Stuart's 8 years old. And I was like, he couldn't talk and his mouth was hanging open. He goes severely. I'd never seen a retarded child before, mentally retarded. And so I went home to my mom and I said, how could he be 8 years old? Sally Gossman, she has a child who's my age, but he can't talk. Because I just didn't know. And she said, my mom tells me this story. She was the other woman.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah. And who knows, Mike? I mean, I don't know, but I am like, thank you, God, for my grandma,
kidding.
right?
No
Saying,
kidding.
no, don't take those. Because back then they didn't know how medications passed, through the placenta into the fetus. Ooh, you knew. So I'm just very grateful for that. So from then on, it really shaped our family with this whole natural health thing that my mother got on. And even though my father was very successful, she insisted on growing. It was a lot of work for her, by the way, to grow these gigantic organic gardens. And she would always have like a side of everything. It was like grass-fed organic beef and organic chickens. And we had like 2 or 3 freezers in the garage and she'd stuff it full. So I grew up with this incredible legacy of health that I just didn't know any other way. I mean, mom did not allow, like on birthdays, we would have soda pop and and she would make homemade cakes, like her chocolate cake, it would disappear in like 10 minutes because we were all like, yum, treats. 9 kids, right? But I used to like sneak over to my friend's house and like get Oreos or something because it wasn't something mom had around. But thankfully, she raised 9 kids. We're so healthy. Wasn't really into the vaccines. And back then, no, there weren't very many vaccines. I'll tell you that. They just what was it? 5 vaccines that everyone got at our age or whatever. But so yeah, it was just a very different time. But I'm so thankful for that. It shaped me my entire life. I wrote a book called Skinny Life, which I'm pulled down and I'm republishing it because it's the real skinny, on Fit, Slim, and Healthy. And it's really about loving foods more than ever, but love the foods that love you back.
Right.
And just about natural movement. I mean, we always were moving when we were growing up, and now we're in this sort of sedentary world of, and we all need to watch it because we can do something from just a little computer. So yeah, that was that. And then I grew up and high school was easy for me. And I was a little bored. And so I decided to graduate myself at age 16. And my boyfriend, who was 5 years older, was pressuring me to marry him. Right. And I knew I had this, I knew it wasn't the right thing to do, but he put so much pressure on me. Right. And so somehow he told me he was going to kill himself if I didn't do it. So I ended up, I mean, it's very like high school, young drama.
Yeah.
I did it. And 2.5 years later, I'm divorced, baby on my hip. Right. In a new city, no family, no friends, no idea what I was going to do next with my life. And, I'm getting eviction notices every month, my little apartment. And so I thought, well, somebody told me, get food stamps. I said, okay, I'll do it. So I was standing there that first time in line to exchange my food stamps for diapers and groceries. And all of a sudden this question dropped in my head. And I swear it was like, God, Holy Spirit talking to me, God, like, are you doing the best you can, or are you taking the easy way out? And I was like, the minute that question popped into my mind, I felt like busted because I knew I was kind of taking the easy way out. I knew this wasn't my best. I had no idea what that was. I had no idea what my best was, but I knew that wasn't it.
Your standards were yelling at you.
Yes, my standards yelling at me, and it's the dreams God seeds in your heart, that
Exactly
are
it.
calling to you, like, what are
Yep.
you doing? You're off track. So honestly, I had such an epiphany. By the time I handed those food stamps to her, I think I looked a little fierce because I was like, this will not be my future. I was saying that to myself. I'll never do this again. In fact, I threw the rest of the food stamps away. I mean, that's pretty stubborn and maybe kind of dumb, but
Hey, it's like burning the ships.
yeah, it
Okay.
was my burning the ships. And
That's
I was
it.
like, I went home to my little apartment and I thought, you know what? I started asking questions. I didn't have any answers, but I had questions. And after that question dropped in my mind, I've said, what could I do to make money tomorrow? Who would hire me? What? And as I'm asking these questions, boom, the answer drops in. I go, I heard on the radio, you can get work tomorrow through these temporary service companies, Kelly girls. So I call them up. I'm like, what do I have to do to get work? Fill out the paperwork. Next thing I know, I'm taking all these jobs. You can say yes or no's, but I'm taking the ones that sound good, but I'm making sure I work every day. So I'm like filling in at attorneys' offices, doing whatever, filing, answering phones. I'm setting up booths at malls for shows. I'm, convention centers, all kinds of things, small businesses. And I'm really starting to learn so much about myself. And I was like, I learned that I really loved sales and I love the idea of small business. Like, what? You mean you just had an idea and you just put it together and made a business? That is so great, So I decided to, I made enough money. Well, another thing I did at the time, someone said, you should go try some modeling. You could do some modeling. I'm like, at that point, I'm like, I'm asking. I don't care. I don't care if they say, all they can do is say no. So I go into the top modeling agency in our town. I'm, kind of charmed my way in, and they had me walk down the runway. I faked my way down the runway. I read some lines, for a television commercial, and they signed me.
Wow.
So yeah. So then I ended up going to real estate school, got my real estate license, and a year and a half from that time, that moment that I was turning over my food stamps for food and diapers, I'm now working for the largest home builder in our valley. I became the #1 realtor of the month, right? This is a huge accomplishment. And I had been booked for several national television commercials. So when you book enough money, through the TV commercials, you have to join Screen Actors Guild. Well, so I joined, not knowing what it was even going to do for me. One day I get this packet in the mail, and especially at the time, the best insurance benefits you have ever seen. So, I'm making these royalty checks every month. They're called residuals. I'm selling real estate, and I get this insurance for me and my dependents. So my little boy's covered on everything, 0 deductible. There's no such health insurance policy anymore. It's like 0 deductible. Everything was paid for. And I'm like, thank you, God. I am so glad. I think sometimes we have to parent ourselves and we have to ask ourselves the tough questions. And that was a tough question. Like, are you doing the best you can? Or are you taking the easy way out? That moment comes up for all of us in this lifetime, and probably multiple times, right? Because life is challenging.
You just have to care enough to ask, right?
That's it. You have to care enough to ask, and you have to stop and be aware that new answers, a new direction is just a question away.
Yeah.
Most people never stop. They never stop. They get on the, on the hamster wheel, and they just keep running, and it's not working. But it's like, I got to keep going. Yeah,
they're staying myopic.
Yeah,
because that's the comfort, right? That's the comfortable way to be. When you start, and one of the things that I told my kids, are 24 and 26 now.
Awesome.
One of the things I told my kids a couple of years ago was, I said, look, you're going into the workforce now. They both graduated college, all that. You're going into the workforce now. I want you to take a Microsoft Word document, blank.
Yeah.
And at the top, I want you to write, stay in curiosity. And at the bottom, I want you to write, stay out of judgment. I want you to blow it up as large as you possibly can. And I want you to put it up in front of where you're going to be working every day. So you look at it several times a day. Because here's the thing. I will ask some of the dumbest questions you've ever heard in your life. Okay? Because I don't prejudge them.
No.
I just stay in curiosity. And I find things out about people, Crystal, that will boggle your mind.
Yes.
but it's because I'm willing to ask. And I know for a fact that there are people that listen to this podcast that literally go, I would never ask that question.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I would, right?
Like Barbara Walters.
Right?
Remember
I would never,
Barbara Walters?
how in the
Yeah,
world does this guy go without any, right? But it's truly like a muscle. It's like one of those things that you have to work. You have to do it consistently.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And you just have to be willing to care enough to ask. The biggest thing about The Power of Questions, which is a book that Mark and I are writing.
Yes.
The biggest thing about The Power of Questions is caring. Because if you don't care, you're never going to ask. Right? You're just gonna continue, like you said, you're gonna continue on down the road that you've always been on, and you're never gonna look at any options, and you're never gonna ask yourself, how can I do better?
That's right. That's exactly right.
How can I get to the standard that God has set for me? Right? That's exactly what happened with you. What a remarkable turnaround.
Yeah, I know. And I would often think back, like, what if I hadn't asked that question? Or what if I hadn't answered it honestly, courageously? The answer could have been, are you doing the best you can? I could have gone into the victim mode. And it's very easy when we're struggling to go into victim mode, right?
And blame everybody else.
I'm young, no one's helping me. I'm by myself in this city. What's wrong if I get some assistance? What's wrong with that? And it's, what that would have done to me? It would have demoralized me. It would have prevented me from finding my core, my strength, my direction, And so, like, asking yourself the tough questions and then answering them courageously. Right?
Would have kept you from becoming a champion, my dear.
Yes. Yeah.
Would have kept you from becoming a champion, and certainly would have kept you from becoming the Queen of Denmark.
Well, yeah. And, that's the important thing. It's been a lot of fun.
That's absolutely one of my favorite stories ever. And if people haven't heard that story that Mark tells, it is priceless, absolutely priceless. It's about getting into a club, and I'll leave it there. People need to go research it and hear it for themselves. Yep. Really cool story, though. Fine. So is it okay if I ask you a couple of questions?
Of course.
So since we're talking about the power of questions, right? That's right. So growing up, I think I know the answer, but growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
Really, it was my mother and my father in such different ways. My mother taught me this legacy of health and, that it's worth your body is, I mean, now I understand, like it says in the Bible, your body is a temple. It really is. If this isn't working, if it's unhealthy, you will not receive all of the light, all of the ideas, all of the things. If your health is breaking down, what do you have? It's a complete distraction from your destiny. So that is a legacy. My mother, she was so consistent. She raised us with such, she's a very organized mother. You'd have to be with 9 kids. I look back and go, how did she do it? I have 3 kids. I thought that was a lot. So it's just really about, that love and sacrifice as a mother and sort of that legacy of health. My dad is an absolute genius. I mean, he's on the other side now, but my dad was it's funny because Mark is called the ambassador of possibilities. My dad was that and then some. My dad would look and he'd say, what do you want to be when you grow up, honey? You can be the president. You can be Miss America. You can do, he would just start rattling off. So you need to start thinking about it. What do you want? What do you want to be? And he would, say, you are the most beautiful, bright, you are so smart. And what we didn't realize about my dad, we did a book for my dad when he was I think when he turned 70. And my eldest niece, who is the eldest grandchild of his, we each wrote a little story about dad and grandpa. And she said, I always knew that I was grandpa's favorite until I got old enough to realize that we all think we're grandpa's favorite. That's how my dad was magical. He made you feel like, and it was very sincere because in that moment, you were the most important person in the world, in the room. You had every quality to become everything. And that's how he made you feel. And so his influence on me was remarkable. I think when you meet strong women, I've noticed they usually have strong fathers. And I'm just so grateful for that.
And they typically have strong fathers, and they typically have a very strong relationship with that father.
Strong relationship. Oh yeah. Yeah. And my dad, I got straight A's from the very beginning, and my brother would get C's, and my sister would get some A's and B's. And so I remember one time I deliberately thought, I always tested into the highest math class, and I didn't like advanced algebra. I think I was in 7th grade. So I thought, I'm just not going to do that well. So I don't so I don't have to take the hardest math.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my first C, all A's, one C. And he takes, we do a review of our report card,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to face my dad. It was like, oh, so he wasn't a pushover. I mean, he was like, his expectations were so high, even though he was so loving and he saw the best in you. He had very high expectations. So I had my speech all planned. And he goes, how did you get a C? And I said, well, Dad, that's not fair because Reed always gets C's and Teresa gets C's and B's. And you know what he said to me? You're not them.
Yeah.
You're not them.
Yeah.
And I know what you're capable of.
Go, Dad.
I'm only talking to you. And I was like, whoa, okay.
Right.
So it's just, it's had a huge influence over me in the best way. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So in high school, did you have a favorite subject?
I always loved English, writing, loved it. I loved history too. But I think I've always loved writing and reading since I was so little. I won the contest in 2nd grade to read the most books, and we got a little choo-choo train car put up around the room. I think I had like 220 choo-choo train cars around the room.
That's awesome.
I won the choo-choo train contest because I would come home and I just read 6 books. They were easy to read. I was like, why isn't everyone doing this?
Right. This isn't that difficult.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I love books, and my love of reading continued. I would go through series, as I started growing up, like the whole Nancy Drew series, and then I'd finish it and read it all over again, and the whole Little House on the Prairie series. And once I was done, I'd read it again. I'd like all of our series, I'd read 3 or 4 times. It was a little nutso, but I loved it. I love reading and writing and stories. I remember when I was in 3rd grade. You know how you show up? I think I missed a couple of days of school for being sick or something, and I show up and the teacher says, how many of you have your story done? And I was panicked. I'm like, what story? Your Halloween story. And when did, because I was so conscientious as a student. I was like, I didn't want to make my teacher upset. And so she said, you have, and like there were probably 6 of us who didn't have the story done or hadn't started it. And she said, this needs to be done. You have 1 hour. And I was like, okay. I got the directions again from her. She reiterated what the story was about. So I wrote furiously, like my little hand was aching by the end of it. And then she shut the time off. And so I had to pick a different ending. And I was so disappointed. I'm like, oh, wonder if she's not going to like the story. She's not going to like that ending. So my parents go to parent-teacher conference. I forgot all about the story. And they bring home this story. And it says, it's an A++++. They're like, Chrissy, this story is so amazing. You did such a good job. And I just stood there and smiled and thought, wow, if you like this version, you should have seen the one I had in my head that I didn't get to finish. So I think I just always had an affinity for writing and stories. And, it was I loved it.
Sounds like you're probably pretty good under pressure too.
Yes, very good under pressure. And maybe that comes from, there were a lot of expectations growing up in a family of 9. It's like, you got to help, put these kids to bed, diaper these, because I was the 2nd eldest daughter. So it was my brother, the eldest was a boy, then my older sister, then me. So I had 6 siblings younger. So, which I loved, they were so cute and fun to play with. And I always felt, they say one of the ways that children build self-esteem is by feeling that they play an integral role in the family structure. And we all did. I mean, there was no doubt we all felt like this family can't survive without, us each doing our parts. So I think that was really good for us. I think it was, really important. I think as parents, we all need to watch, because I had to watch myself, because I think all of our kids are growing up a little more entitled, and we try to make it so soft for them and a little bit easier. So I had to deliberately go, no, let them figure this out, and let them work a little harder, and that sort of thing. Do you agree with that?
Do you mind if I share something with you? I
Yeah.
1000% agree with it. Do you mind if I tell you a little story?
Yeah. No,
So I
dude.
grew up on a farm in Oklahoma.
Oh, there you go. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I farmed with my grandfather for 9 years. It was one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life.
Oh, yeah.
And it was almost not fair, because everything after that has felt like I was playing hooky. Like literally, right? Like I wasn't, because that was the hardest work I've ever done in my life.
Oh, yeah.
So I told my kids, I said, listen, I don't have a time machine, but if I had a time machine, you'd go back and you'd work with granddad on the
Yep.
farm. Okay.
Yep.
So here's the deal. You're going to have a much better childhood, much better life than I ever dreamed of having.
Right.
And here's what's going to happen. If you ever once sound like you're entitled, sound like you're spoiled,
Yes.
start whining. Okay. I'm going to take you to the local horse ranch, and I'm going to have you muck out stalls for free until you don't feel entitled anymore.
I love it.
And the first thing they said was, what's mucking out the stalls?
It's awful.
What are stalls? So I explained to them what stalls are. And they're like, what's the muck? I'm like, well, here's what it consists of. And they're like, ew, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like someone does that. Yeah.
So every time that they even started to say, and they're great kids, Crystal. They're some of the most phenomenal kids you've ever met in your life.
I'm sure.
When you meet them, you will fall in love with them instantly. I promise you.
Yes. Yes.
Both of them are they're the cat's meow. Okay. I couldn't be more proud of them if I tried.
That's so
the thing is, they would sound like they were going to whine, or sound like they were going to sound spoiled or whatever. And I'm like, you ready to go muck out some stalls?
Oh.
They get right back in line like that.
Sorry, Dad,
right?
just kidding.
Because they knew, and they literally said to me, each of them independently, without the other one knowing, said to me, Dad, you really weren't kidding. Like, you were serious. You were going to take us to I said, yeah, I was. 1000%.
Mean business. Yeah. And I remember one day, so that was my brother's job, because he was the eldest. My mom wanted a cow. So my dad bought a cow so we could have raw organic milk and cottage cheese. Right.
I love your mom. I just love your mom.
Cool. Like, the funny thing is she didn't have to do any of that.
Yeah.
Like, she didn't have to. She did it because she sacrificed a lot more. She could have just gone out to Albertsons every day and got whatever she wanted. Dad was successful, right? But so Reed, it's one of the ways I think my dad kept him home at regular intervals, right? He would have to clean the stalls. And we had the girls had the indoor work, helping with the kids, laundry, stuff like that. So one day he said, we just come out, it was a rare mood, because he teased us relentlessly. I don't blame him, tormented us really. But he's in a good mood, and we're kind of joking. And he's like, just come out with me one time and you'll see what it's like. We start going through that, and I almost retched like 16 times. I'm trying to be a helpful sister, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know how he does this. It's like overpowering ammonia.
Yeah, this is gross. Let's be honest, it's gross. It's just gross. Yeah.
And it gave me a new respect for him. I'm like, oh my gosh, Dad makes you do this all the time. I'm so sorry. Doing the dishes doesn't seem that bad anymore, right? Throwing some laundry in and folding, it's okay.
True. It's true.
Funny. Yeah.
It's a different way to grow up. It really is. Yeah. And I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
No,
it was literally, I use things every day, Crystal, that I learned from my grandfather on that farm, every day. And so it's, it was a great way to grow up. So in high school, did you have a favorite teacher?
I had, I didn't. Yeah, I did. Coach Guilford, I think, was my favorite teacher. He taught speech, and he just loved our family. He appreciated our family. So my sister was his TA before me, and then I was his TA. And I took every class I could. I took English, I took speech, because he was just such a cool guy, and I loved his lectures. And I could type pretty fast, so he would have me type personal papers for him, which is probably not. But yeah, he was my favorite
That's cool.
for
My
sure.
speech teacher was my favorite too, Mr.
Really?
Roach. Oh yeah. He
Oh,
was my
that's
coach. So freshman year, so I'm in Oklahoma working on the farm.
right. Yep.
The deal was when we moved to California from Oklahoma, I was 13 at the time and I was full on into I'd been farming for 4 years.
Wow.
And so when my parents said we're going to California, I said no, we're not. I'm
Wow.
staying here.
So you
And
loved it.
so we had to negotiate. And the negotiation was I would go to California with them, which is where I am now. I would, for 45 years, by the way, I
Wow.
would go to school when I was supposed to go to school out here. But the day that the day that summer started, it was like Christmas for me. I would get on a plane and fly to Oklahoma. And I
That's
would work
amazing.
nonstop until the day before school started. So my mother had to go to high school and register me for classes.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
That,
I was on a tractor going around and around a field in Oklahoma. They didn't have cell phones back then.
nope.
And my mother was at the school trying to figure out an elective for me.
What does he want?
Right. So she calls me up and she says, listen, I registered you for school today and I need to talk to you about the elective that I chose for you. And I said, okay. And she said, if you don't, just try it. If you don't like it,
Yeah. Yeah.
you can drop the class. It's okay. I won't be offended. Right. Okay. Right. What's the class, Mom? She says, speech. I said, Mom, I don't know how to say this to you, but I don't have a lisp. I don't have a stutter. I really, people consider me pretty
Right.
articulate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think I need a speech class. So no, we're not doing that. And she goes, no. It's not that kind of speech class.
Speaking.
It's a public speaking class. I'm like, no way. No, not doing that. Right. She goes, just try it.
Yeah.
So I go my freshman year, first day of school, and I meet Mr. Roach. And he's a little grumpy and he's a little rough, but just like my grandfather. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
And after
Really?
class, he says, Mr. Litton, will you stay after? I'm like, oh, great. What do they do now? Right. It's my first class. Right. He said, because he had all of us get up and do a speech about our favorite movie. So I got up and did a speech on Star Wars, which at the time was my favorite movie. Okay. I was horrible, Crystal. I mean, to say I was horrible is being generous. Okay. I was really bad.
Right. Right.
At the end, he said, listen, I think you're better than anybody on our speech team.
What? Oh, that's so cool.
No joke. And he goes, and this Saturday, we have a speech tournament at San Diego State University in San Diego. The bus will be here at 7 a.m. I'd love for you to come down and just watch. Just watch. I mean, you know exactly what he was doing. Just watch.
Yep. Yep.
So I get on the bus, 7 a.m. Saturday morning. I go down there. I had a blast. And one of the things that I learned was I can do a lot better than them.
Yeah. Isn't that
Okay.
crazy?
And it was nuts. It was like, oh yeah, this is right. Talk about standards, right?
Yeah.
And so I ended up becoming one of the most successful competitive speakers in all of high school, right? All the way through 4 years, captain of the debate team, junior and senior year. And I ended up in the top 0.5% of competitive speakers nationwide when I graduated.
Isn't that unbelievable?
I had a blast. I had more fun doing this, right? Because I'm competitive anyway, but this was one of those just wow. And Mr. Roach was somebody who saw something in me that I didn't see, not even close.
Right. Well, and I love that because I mean, I think you have to look at your life, and I encourage people to do this all the time. Like life is leaving you clues all the time to your destiny.
Absolutely.
God is working with you through you all the time, and you don't know it if you don't stay aware of it, right? Like just your mom even signing you up for that class, right? And look where it's led. I mean, look what you're doing today. And you don't know all of these little things that are building your destiny. They're building, they're taking you, across that bridge to your destiny, all these little dreams in your heart that you're not even aware. But when you start to become aware, it's really cool. And also reflecting back like you are now, like, wow, that kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
It does. And it all like comes together, right? And
Yes,
it's one of
yes.
those things where you couldn't write that script because
No,
God was writing that script,
that's right.
you
That's
know?
right.
And I'm literally, as we're talking right now, I'm
Yeah,
literally living what I was prepared by God to do. I'm doing what I was called to do. I'm
that's what
convinced
I
of it, you know?
100%,
So,
100, I know it.
yeah,
It's just crazy.
yeah,
And then if it gets really good, then God brings you together with this partner. Like when Mark and I came together, unbelievable, impossible.
yeah.
But he and I were meant to come together because of what we can do together.
Totally agree. 1000%. Okay.
Yeah.
So, isn't it amazing how teachers can just change your life? I mean, it's just amazing,
So
They see
yes,
something in you
so
you don't see, right? So
right.
after you graduate from high school, where do you go?
So remember I got married.
16, right?
So I didn't go to college right away, but I did
Right.
come around and start in college again. But the problem was I went for 2 years. So we ended up, getting a divorce. I'm still so young. I'm like 21, divorced, baby on my hip. But I'm already making so much money. I mean, my kids, my friends are at university,
Mhm.
getting through chemistry, and I'm like making 120,000 a year.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of hard to go, okay, like, why am I going back right now? But I did. I took some classes and then ended up meeting another guy, and we ended up getting married. And so he and I were married for 20 years, had two daughters, and just kind of went different directions. He's a great father, but it's just we didn't see the world, as things went on the same way. I started taking a lot of alternative classwork. I became a life coach. I went to Southwest Institute of Healing Arts. I got certified as a master hypnotherapist because my sister. What inspired me to do that is my sister, who had been a smoker for like since she was 15, she couldn't kick the habit,
Mm.
and so she went to a hypnotherapist, and he just gave her directions like to break that habit and listen to the tape for 30 days, and she stopped smoking forever,
Wow.
forever. And I was so compelled. I'm like,
Oh,
people
cool.
need this. So I added that tool to my tool belt. And then I ended up starting a practice, a life coaching practice, using all kinds of modalities that I studied, emotional freedom technique. It's the protocol of tapping. And so I started taking people through, and business was just amazing. I mean, people were just finding me word of mouth. I had people coming to me who had been depressed their entire lives, anxiety, can't break addictions. I had a woman come with a Diet Coke addiction. She was drinking a case of Diet Coke a day, and her doctor said, "You are getting symptoms of MS. You have to stop. You're going to kill yourself."
Mhm.
She's like, "I can't stop." So I was able to help these people break these addictions. I was able to, I think one of my favorite stories was a woman named Kathy. She called me up and she goes, "I heard you on the radio and you are my last hope." She's like, I wake up depressed every day. I
Oh,
just feel like
goodness.
I want to die." She's like, "I just feel like I shouldn't be alive." And so, I took her through my whole protocol, and we do this intake and do like the EFT, the protocol and all of these things. And in 5 sessions, she wrote me an email and she said, "Crystal, I just thank God that you came into my life." She said, "I wake up happy every day. I
Wow.
don't have the feeling anymore that I want to die, that I shouldn't be alive. Um, and I can, if I have a bad day, it's just a bad day." She had grown up in a really interesting situation. She grew up in the time of the Depression, and her mother was mentally ill. Just walked out on the 3 girls one day, left them with their father. The father, you know, wasn't a very sophisticated man. One day he loads the kids in the truck and drives them over to the relatives. He says, "Here, you take these girls. I can't handle it anymore. I don't know how
Mm.
to take care of them." I mean, just drives off. So, she's like has these memories of chasing her dad with dust blowing in her face, going, "Daddy, don't leave us." Never
Mhm.
sees him again. Mom already left the picture. And so then the relatives are discussing like, "Okay, well, we'll take the 2-year-old because she's little and she needs help. And we'll take the 4-year-old because we have another 5-year-old, they'll play. And then everyone's looking at her like, we can't really, we don't want another mouth to feed. So like the rejection this woman felt was overwhelming. She had a good work ethic because she knew how to work. And so she was in insurance and she made good money, but just this overwhelming worthlessness. Yeah.
Yeah.
In my mind.
It's there the whole time. They
It's there
planted that seed and it's just,
planted it. And it's like, I'm not worth anything to
yeah.
anyone.
Oh
And
my
so
goodness. Bless her
we
heart.
we neutralized that. We completely neutralized it. She's living a completely normal life. So
Wow.
so I knew like I was in the right place. I knew I
Yeah.
found that calling. And I started writing a book at that time called Pure Thoughts for Pure Results.
Mhm.
Well, I didn't have the title. So at that point, my ex-husband and I had just gone through a divorce.
Mhm.
And my mom called me up one day and said, Crystal, you need to go to this Author 101 event. She's like,
Mhm.
there'll be publishers and publicists, and Mark Victor Hansen will be there. And I'm like, oh, whoa, okay, mom. When is it? And she's like, it's the day after tomorrow.
Mhm.
I go, oh no, I can't do it. I don't have a babysitter for the kids, and it's going to be sold out, mom. Looks like a really popular event.
Mhm.
And she's like, just call, So she pushes me. She's really pushing me. I call the promoter, Rick Frischman. And the crazy thing is, Mike, he called me back in under 5 minutes himself, not his assistant, not his secretary. He's like, hey, Crystal, it's Rick Frischman, and we are not sold out. And I want you over here. And, so I give him my credit card, upgrade to VIP. Day and a half later, I'm there, right?
Mhm.
Mark's the keynote. And I'm all business. I'm like not messing around. So when I go to the VIP reception, I'm like, I'm not even drinking a glass of wine. I'm having no
Mhm.
wine. I'm here to do business. Right.
Mhm.
So I'm talking to a speaking coach, and I notice off in the corner, like Mark is surrounded by an entourage of people, right?
Mhm.
Mark, how do you do this and help me with this? And all of a sudden, the girl who's not drinking anything at all, this woman from South America is talking with her hands next to me and whacks an entire glass of red wine on my white pants. It's like the wine just jumped on my pants, and Mark must have been looking my way because all of a sudden I see him. I'm looking at my pants, and then I look up and he's breaking out of his crowd,
Mhm.
and he comes rushing over to me. He goes, I'm so sorry. He grabs my hand and he starts pulling me out of the room. And he goes, I know where the club soda is. Follow me. So we exit the room, we find the club soda, and then he's just like, tell me about you. And so I was on fire about I've got this practice, people are healing. It's amazing, starting over. I'm writing this book about it. And after he listened to me for a few months, he goes, there's something really unusual about you. He goes, I really think that you have the ability to really change things for people in a big way, especially for women. And he said, I'd love to hear more, but I'm starving. Have you had dinner? And I hadn't. It was like 9:30 at night. And he's like, would you like to have dinner? And he said, we should probably leave this property though, because I'm going to be surrounded all night if we don't. We won't
Mhm.
get to have a conversation. And I said, well, sure, but I got to go change my pants. So I go upstairs, call mom. I said, I have to hurry. How are the kids? And she's like, great. I said, you're not going to believe it. I said, I'm going to dinner with Mark Victor Hansen. And she goes, I knew it. Mom knows, right?
Yep.
And it's so weird because it's like I had this feeling, and I don't know if you've ever gotten this, where sometimes you're going along in life, and then something seems to be pulling you in a direction, and it seems to have a life of its own.
Mhm.
I swear, Mike, I even said to myself, like, what is going on?
Mhm.
Rick calls me back. I'm there a day later. It's like, and then Mark's like, this whole thing. And so then, the rest of the story. We go to
Mhm.
that restaurant, and they have to, I think we should make them go find that other part of the story about the Queen of Denmark.
I love that though. I mean, there's this line at the front, right? And you're not
Yes.
able to get in and they're
Right.
not letting people in.
No, I mean, it is
And
like backed up.
and Mark just takes you and goes up front and he's like,
Yeah.
hey,
Do you know
this
who she
right?
is? Yeah. He's
Right?
like, do
Do
you
you have
know who
any
she
idea who
is?
that is? Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, and who travels with the Queen
Yeah.
of
Well,
Denmark?
then he has the guy like scratching. He's like, she looks familiar. Who? He's thinking, oh, have I seen her on and he goes, she's the Queen of Denmark. And he's like, what? Really? And he's like, who are you? And Mark's yelling, well, who travels with the queen? And it's like, oh, you're the king. And I am laughing inside thinking, this guy is going to know that we're just joking, because Mark and I were having such a good time. It was like instantly we just had this playful, attitude with each other. It was really natural. And so he rushes off and I'm like, I think he believed you. He comes back. He's like, follow me. I've got a table for you. We're like, you know what? Too late. We'll just go with it. So we sit down in this special table at the back, and the chef with the houndstooth pants comes out and talks to us. We're just like, this is a lot of fun. It was very fun.
It's the power of questions.
That's right.
Right? Because he let that guy fill in the blank.
He did. Don't you know who he is? That's all he's right?
Right.
Who travels with you? Yeah, it was so cute. It was just a lot of fun. It was just such a memorable way to start off our first little date.
I love that. So we're going to take a break. And when we come back from our break, we're going to talk about this book, Ask. And we're going to talk about what made you decide, you and Mark, to write this book. We'll be back in just a second. Did you know there's an app that has no side effects that allows you to use sound waves to tell your brain what you want it to do? It's called newcalm.com. And it's amazing. It literally uses sound waves. If you want to tell your brain to go to sleep, if you want to tell your brain to recover, if you want to tell your brain to put you in peak physical state, if you want to tell your brain to focus, if you want to tell your brain to take a power nap, you can do all of these things and more with newcalm.com. Go to newcalm.com today, promo code Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go there today. And we're back with Crystal Dwyer Hansen, Mark Victor Hansen's better half. I can say that, right? And the Queen of Denmark, right? Yeah. So you guys decide, the two of you, and what an amazing team you are. I mean, the energy that you have and your ability to change people's lives is just epic. And it's in this book, Ask. You talk a lot about how there are a lot of stories, a lot of anecdotes in this book about how people have massively changed their lives simply, and you did too. Your life story is about how you changed your life from food stamps to #1 in real estate in 12 months, right? Yeah. You're making $120,000 a year, and you were on food stamps 12 months prior. There is a massive amount of transformation that can take place if all you do is ask. And so I want people to understand that you and Mark came together as an amazing, amazing team. And you've been married now how long?
We just celebrated our 14th anniversary.
Oh, congratulations.
But we dated for 2.5 years before that. So, I mean, and it has gone like that, Mike. Yeah. It's like it kind of feels like when you're with someone you're supposed to be with. I think it's like we've always been together. It feels like that in a way, but it's also gone so fast.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. My time with Mark has gone really, really fast. My time with you has gone really fast. I can understand how the two of you together, it's got to go fast, right?
Yeah. It's
got to just be supercharged, you know?
Oh, it is. It is. We live a supercharged life.
Exactly, right? So you guys at some point make the decision, this power couple, make the decision to write this book. Talk about, because there are people that are listening to this that are thinking about writing a book. They just haven't taken that step.
Right.
And, you know, honestly, Crystal, we just surpassed last night 3 million listens to our podcast.
Congratulations.
We're in 64 countries worldwide.
Fabulous.
You're episode 332.
Ooh, nice number.
And we've been doing this 20 months as of today.
Only 20 months?
20 months. We're not even 2 years old.
Wow. Okay? Congratulations, Mike.
Thank you. It's pretty cool. We're pretty excited about it. Can you tell? I hide it well, right?
Yeah. No, you are so passionate about what you do. So congratulations.
Thank you. The thing about it is, I know from our listeners that there are dozens of people that have decided to write a book simply because they've been inspired by podcast episodes that we've done, interviews we've done with authors, interviews we've done with people that are thinking about writing a book, that kind of thing. And it's inspired people to take action. Talk a little bit about what inspired you to do this and how the two of you came together to do this. What made you decide that this was compelling enough to take action?
Right. So Mark and I are so blessed, as you probably know, to be able to travel the world everywhere and speak and train audiences. And we meet the most remarkable people. I mean, what you realize when you travel is people are so beautiful
Mm,
everywhere. And so in our travels, in all of our experiences, we know so many people. We discovered a pattern, right? And it is basically that people who are masterful and successful at life also happen to be masterful at asking questions, right? They know how to formulate the right question at the right time, in the right way to the right person. And that continues to provide new resources for them again and again and again. If you look at every successful person, they are master askers.
mhm,
And then we started looking at our own life, like, lives together. Um, and both individually and together, anytime we experienced troubles, challenges, setbacks, even something devastating, right? We realized it was our ability. What did we do? How did we get
mhm,
out of it? How do we keep moving forward? Did we recreate, right? It was we our ability to sit down and ask ourselves, ask God, ask others that revectored us,
mhm.
gave us a new direction, gave us a new plan that wasn't there before, that
Yeah.
was not there before. And as the deeper we dove into this topic, the more we said we have to share this. This is so important. And we also differentiated that, there are actually three channels through which to ask, and those are
Mhm,
ask yourself, ask others, and ask God. And each of those channels is equally important, right? So the asking yourself is that reflective journey. Like,
mhm.
and people don't do this. Like we were
Yeah,
talking about that. Like, how can you know where you're going if you never stop to question it? Like,
exactly.
what am I doing? Is this working? Do I like it? Am I happy? Right? The asking others part is what we call the bonding journey.
Mhm,
Okay. You cannot do this life without others. You cannot be a lone ranger. You just
mhm,
won't be successful and you won't be happy.
mhm,
So, the ability to be able to ask others and feel comfortable about that is so critical. And then the final thing is, the asking God, like it's really just putting your life in a higher, more universal context. Like your life isn't just about you. It's like,
mhm,
how do you fit into that universal purpose, that kingdom purpose, right? And there's something so beautiful when you start to think about that because I think people beat up on themselves. They're like, I'm not enough. But you are playing an important role and you are part of the movement of this kingdom. And so asking those questions of yourself, others, and God will always lead, what we say is like, pull those dreams that are already seated in your heart. They are there. You might have shut them down, but they're pull those dreams out and follow that path, or as we call it, the bridge to
mhm,
your destiny, right? And I just want to say, like, we all start out as these beautiful young children, right? We come into this world, you know, we're unashamed askers.
mhm.
We want to know everything. We're wildly curious. We want to know who, what, when, where, why, how.
We don't take no for an answer.
Don't take no for an answer. I
They're
mean, we're
natural closers,
afraid to ask for more.
right?
We're like this world, we come with this natural sort of knowing that the world is full of abundance for us.
No
And then,
shame.
yeah,
No
no shame.
shame.
But then depending on how, you were parented, what happened in school, jobs, work, it's like, maybe your parents were like, I am so tired of it. Stop asking so many questions. I'm tired of
Mhm,
it. Or, you go to school and they're like, do not ask unless you're called upon and like raise your hand and you're picked and all of these things, or you go start your first job and you're trying to ask and find out and offer feedback and no one's interested. And so over time people get shut down by life, and all of a sudden we find ourselves standing there, um, as full grown adults. It's so crazy, like, but afraid to ask for anything and
scared to
almost
death.
scared to death.
Scared to death to ask.
Yeah, and almost ashamed that you don't have all the answers, right?
Absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely.
I have to pretend I know everything, and it's kind of what you were talking about earlier. You're like, "I don't
Mhm.
care. I'll just ask any dumb question."
Yeah.
These people are too ashamed. They're too ashamed to reveal that they don't know everything, or or that they, deserve to have a question answered. I mean, this is why we wrote the book. All of these things are so important.
Well, that's what I loved about reading the book
Yeah.
was there were so many things there, and there were so many things that spoke to me. It's like going to church, talking about Sarah O'Mara, right? Remember we talked about Sarah earlier? Sarah's in
Yes.
your book, by the way, right?
Sarah has a story in our book, and it's an amazing story. She
It's
has
an
some.
amazing story. And the thing about it is, have you ever gone to church? And I know that people are listening to me have, right? Have you ever gone to church and sat in church in the middle of 1,000 people and thought the pastor wrote this message for me,
Oh, totally.
right?
Yes.
And it's what it is when the student's ready, the teacher will appear.
Boom.
That's simple. Okay.
Yep.
And it's literally what happens when you ask, and when you care enough to ask, and when you care enough to ask like a child.
Yes.
Childlike curiosity.
Good.
Okay. Do you know the number one piece of feedback that we get about this podcast, and specifically about me?
I'd love to know.
Nobody's ever asked me those questions before, Mike.
Wow.
Nobody's ever asked me that question. Nobody's ever asked me about me. Nobody's ever asked me about my childhood. Nobody's ever asked me about my mom. Nobody, right? And it's like, I literally go at this as if I'm a 2-year-old. And by the way, I was a handful when I was a 2-year-old. Okay. My parents are shocked that I survived my childhood.
But you made it.
Right? But it's one of those things where I constantly work to stay in curiosity. And I constantly work to try to ask questions that nobody would ever ask. Right?
Yes.
And the thing about what you wrote that's so magical, and by the way, just real quick, because we were talking about this, and we have been honestly talking for a little while now. And we've been talking about Mark. And for people that don't know who Mark Victor Hansen is, he's a very famous guy. But for people that don't know, he actually has the Guinness Book of World Records record. He's the record holder for the single greatest selling nonfiction author in the world. He sold over 600 million copies of his book, The Chicken Soup for the Soul, and his other books, right? The man is an absolute powerhouse, absolute powerhouse. And if you met him, you'd never know it. He's the nicest guy on the planet. And what he cares about is you. He cares about taking care of the person that he's with at the time. He cares about how he can help them. He cares about what he can do to pour into them, especially if he feels like you're doing something to help make the world better, right?
Yeah.
Because that's really your mission.
Yes.
Your mission with Mark is to make the world a better place to live.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And just to that, I want to talk about, because I think it's important that people understand these. We talk about the 7 roadblocks to asking, because you've referred to that, and the first one being that unworthiness, right? It's just sort of that underlying feeling that we were talking about with Kathy. And it comes from our childhood. All of us have. I discovered this in my coaching practice. A little bit of unworthiness. It's kind of the human condition. Even people who are very successful, right? Very accomplished. There's always a little bit of this unworthiness, playing in your head.
Yeah.
So it's important to be able to recognize, like, what is it that's stopping me from asking for my dreams, asking for my destiny? What are those things that are playing in my head, those roadblocks? And the next one we talk about is naivete. And it's a little bit what you talk about, childhood curiosity. I have this, we put this great story about we had a housekeeper. Her name was Imelda from the Philippines. We loved her.
Love this story.
Yeah. And so my girls were born 16 months apart. It was just crazy. And then my son's 9, and we just had a really busy household. So Mel, we called her. She just loved the kids. And she would cook she loved making special dishes for us. And my son loved her pancit. And, so one day she shows up with this fruit. She cuts it up on a plate, and this beautiful orange fruit. She hands it to me. She goes, "Try this, Crystal." And I go, "What is this, Mel?" Then she goes, "Mango. It's a mango." And I was like, wow, that is the most delicious fruit I've ever tasted. How come I've never had a mango before? Because I thought I was so worldly by then. I'd traveled all over Europe many times. And I said, "Melda, where did you get these?" Thinking she must have imported them. And she goes, the grocery store. I was like, you're kidding me. You just bought these at the grocery store? These big, juicy mangoes? And I was like, wow, how is it that I've been missing the mangoes at the grocery store every time I go? But it made me think, Mike, like, what else am I missing in life? Like, I'm
Exactly.
missing the greatest fruit in the world
Right.
because I'm naive, right? I grew up in Idaho. We have a lot of potatoes, no mangoes.
Potato capital of the world, by the way.
Right? Potato capital. And I love those Idaho russets, but yeah. So it's just sort of crazy. And I thought, what person am I just walking by, just not really noticing because, that could be my next best friend, my business partner, my advocate, or someone that I could, just offer a word to today, just something that would make their day. And I thought, we all come to this life with our own sort of cultural set of standards, and we're all naive because we know we grew up with a certain family, certain set of values, certain foods, right? And so I really love to challenge people to, just be so curious. Even trying new foods, going to different restaurants, meeting new people. You just never know what's out there for you. So because I think we all have that naivete roadblock. I think all of us do.
Well, I think we all get in a rut.
Yes.
Right. We all get into a place, where it's like this is comfortable, this is right. And it's interesting because my wife cannot stand change, hates it, absolutely hates change.
Interesting.
And yet she married a guy who's in constant change all the time. I'm changing all the time. And it's like, I don't know what to tell you, honey. You're just going to have to get with the program, right? And I mean, the poor thing, we told my mother and my father that we were getting married. And my mother looked at my fiance at the time, who's now my wife, and she said, "Are you sure?"
Do you want a little time to think about this? Because we would understand.
She goes, "Do you know the tornado you're hitching onto?"
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And she said, "On your wedding day, I'm going to give you two things, a sympathy card and a pair of roller skates. The sympathy card will be self-evident, and the roller skates are so you can keep up."
Oh,
right.
wow.
31 years later, I'm not sure that she's still sure, right? But right?
She still thinks back to that day. Your mom gave her
a wild ride, I can tell you that.
Fair warning. Your
Right?
mom gave her fair warning.
Yeah, exactly, right?
That is so
but
good.
it's, we get in these places and all of us do, right? And it's where that comfort zone is. So it's a real, naivete is a real thing. It really is.
It is. It is a real thing. And then there's doubt. I won't go deeply into it because that's like gray zone. They're just like some people walk around in gray zone. Like they just don't, they kind of doubt everything they're doing. Like, I don't know. I don't think I should do that. I don't think I should ask. I don't think anyone's gonna, I don't think it's the answer. I don't think I'll get the answer. So they just do nothing. And then another one is excuses. And that's really just that stubborn person. How many people do you know? And we use Mark's brother as a story example in this, because he was the most stubborn, and he would just make excuses. No, I'm not going to, he wouldn't ask for help for anything. And we tell the story of how Mark drops him off at the airport in Phoenix to go back to Tennessee. And he's like, do you want me to help you get to the gate? He was like 10 years older. Still in really good shape though. He's like, no, I don't need help. I don't, no. He ends up getting in the airport. It's a big airport, gets confused, doesn't make it to the gate, misses his plane, will not ask for help from anyone, sits there for 13 hours until he can finally get out and gets home with pneumonia.
Yeah.
And, it's just such a great example. Like, if you're that person who's too stubborn to ask, no, I don't need help, I'm going to figure this out for myself. Just give it up, you guys. Like, ask for help. It's the most beautiful thing you can do.
When I read this in your book,
Yeah,
I thought about judgment. He was stuck in judgment and never got anywhere near curiosity, right? And 13 hours later, he ends up, just crazy.
It's crazy. Like, why would you do that to yourself? But you're right. That's a very important point, Mike.
Yeah. He
was judging, like, I'll look stupid. I don't want to look, like I'm a dum-dum, like I don't know what I'm doing. I can figure this out. I'm a big tough guy. He had that, sort of tough guy syndrome.
Pride's a very dangerous thing.
Pride is. It definitely goes before the fall. That is a true thing. Yeah. No, I love that. So, and then there's fear, fear of asking, just, when people are just terrified to ask, I really think at some level they're afraid of losing love.
Yeah.
We're afraid of losing love and
Yeah.
approval. Like it's terrifying to people. And so we need to confront these things inside of ourselves because we can't live our most glorious lives getting to our destiny if we carry all of these roadblocks, right? And
It's a heavy burden.
it's a heavy burden. Another one is pattern paralysis, where it's like, okay, you're going to do the same thing next week, next month, and next year that you did last week, last month, and last year, even
Because it's
though
comfortable.
none of it's working.
Yeah.
You're
It's
miserable.
comfortable. Right.
Everyone around you is miserable. And you never stop. It's pattern paralysis. You are literally paralyzed by this pattern. And you just get on and do it again and again and again. And you're really stopping your life and you're hurting other people's lives. All the people that love you, right? Until you start asking, get off that merry-go-round and start asking how to do something in a different way. And then the last roadblock, which I think for me is kind of the saddest one because it's disconnection. And that's really when you've given up.
Yeah.
You disconnected from dreams in your heart. You just give up hope. You disconnect and it's not going to happen for me. And that is such a lie that you're telling yourself. You have to reconnect to the dreams in your heart. So I really hope that everyone will get this book.
Me too.
And it's on Amazon, of course, and then just go through these really carefully. And I encourage everybody to get, their own asking journal and start penning your questions and looking at them every day. Like go back and review them. What's interesting about that asking journal, as you start to get answers, you will realize that things have changed in your life. And those answers delivered a new paradigm to you. And you're not the same person you were when you started that asking journey. It is truly magical.
So I have a little bit of advice for people if they're willing to listen. You need to read this book more than once. I've read it 3 times. And I've learned something new every single time.
Yeah.
Treat this book like a workbook that will change your life.
Yeah.
Because it absolutely will.
It will.
It absolutely will. It's no mystery that I read this book 3 times, couldn't get enough of it, read it 3 times, and my entire life has just massively changed. We could be here for 3 days talking about all the things that have happened in the last month since I read this book the 3rd time. I'm not joking. And I was committed to being like a little kid before. Now I'm like a toddler and I'm completely out of control, right? I'm asking everybody everything. I'm asking. I mean, it's crazy, right? But it's one of those things where I feel liberated because I read your book, and I feel liberated because I know you and Mark. I feel liberated because of my future's never been so bright. I got to wear shades, baby. It's that simple.
I love that.
So I really feel like people need to approach this as if it's a workbook that truly will change your life, truly. And what happens when you write down in the journal, what happens when you write things down, is there's an actual change that happens in your mind. It's kind of like when you speak it into existence, okay?
Exactly.
When you're writing it, it's even more compelling because your brain has to tell you to write. It's you speaking it, but you're doing so in a writing mode, right? There's one of the things that they talk about is you'll retain a whole ton more in the percentages off the charts.
Oh, yeah.
Where you've taken notes, where you've written things down. You'll retain that. And your brain, your subconscious will be reprogrammed. If you write it down, you will reprogram your subconscious. And you'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. This has happened to me. You'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you go, there it is. There's the answer to that question, right? And by the way, the name of that guy I couldn't remember, there's his name, right?
There's his name.
Yeah, because your subconscious never stops working.
That's right. Or you'll dream it.
Stops working.
Often I will dream it. I will dream. The answer will come to me in a dream. It is the most unbelievable thing. Yeah.
That's it. But the key to it is you got to write it down first, right? Like I'll give people a tip. If you want to solve something in your life, if you have something that's like this massively compelling problem or issue or whatever, write down that you want the solution. Write it down before you go to bed. Write it down. I need the solution by morning. You'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go, right? Leave it next to your bed. Leave it next to your bed so you can wake up and write it down and then go back to bed. Okay. I'm not necessarily suggesting or encouraging insomnia, which I had last night because I was so excited to see you.
I love that.
Right. But it was, just, I'm a little fired up. I know you can't tell, but I'm a little fired up. I hide it well. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So one thing that I want to talk about before we leave each other is I want you to tell us about working on a movie. Not very many people in this world have had the opportunity to work with Hollywood. Okay. And you are in the process with Mark of working on a movie. Tell us a little bit about that experience. What's that been like?
It's been so incredible. When Mark and I were writing the book Ask, we said, let's start it with a story, a fable, right? Because we love stories. Stories kind of get you in, because it's a self-help book, but we love using stories to just sort of get you in the flow. So I said, let me take the first stab. And I started writing and I couldn't stop. And so I wrote the whole fable. I gave it to Mark and he starts bawling. He's like, this is so beautiful. Crystal, this is perfect. So it's called The Fable of Michaela. And basically, Michaela has lost everything. She's an indentured servant at a stone quarry. It's in the time of kings and queens, right? She lost her mother, her father, then her house was taken away from her, and she's an indentured servant. So she's lost all hope. She's lost all hope, and her life every day is about lifting heavy rocks from one place to another. And so she goes home one night exhausted, detached from everything, because there's just nothing there anymore. She falls asleep. She's sleeping in a grove of trees because she has no home. And she hears a voice in her dream. And he says, Michaela, come with me. And it's this irresistible voice. She can't. And so she just says, okay. And the minute she says, okay, she lifts out of her body. And now she's soaring along the sky on this journey with this loving being that she just seems so familiar, but she just doesn't know. So he takes her to this bridge, this beautiful sparkling bridge. And she notices, like, some people don't even notice the bridge, but other people are like going across it. They're entering it with, eagerness and happiness. And she's thinking, what is this? And he said, your decisions are powerful. And the key is to ask and never stop asking, right? Ask yourself, ask others, ask me. So when she wakes up, like, the world looks different. The sky is lighter. Everything's brighter. And, her life over the next, she follows his admonitions, more dream, supernatural dreams come to her. And by the end of the fable, her life has made a 180-degree turn. I mean, impossible changes, right? So during COVID, when we released this, a couple of Hollywood people we were on a thread with got introduced. They saw that we had that book. They got it. They said, we love this. It should be a movie. Can we get the option to sell this? We said, sure, why not? So long story short, they took it to, I'm not supposed to say the movie company, but
no, it's fine. We'll keep it private. It's fine.
Yeah. And got an offer. Well, first they said, can you write it we love it, but can you make it longer? Because it was like 35 pages or something. Yeah. I wrote it into a whole 245-page novel.
Beautiful.
Actually longer than that. I added all these characters and implemented some of the roadblocks and everything into the journey of these characters. So they get that and they're like, we love it. We have a meeting with them. Long story short, they give us an offer. And it's kind of a lower budget, $4 million production budget is a lower budget, but it's a start, right?
Sure.
And so since then, some things have happened, and now another group has come along and they've doubled the budget.
Wow.
So I decided to jump in there and write this. I'd never written a screenplay, and it's a different style of writing, but I'm like, I can learn this.
Sure.
Learn this. So one of the producers, who was the original guy who optioned it from us, he's like, let's get on a Zoom call and I'll teach you, sort of the ins and outs of writing a screenplay. He taught at the university level. So we did, and I wrote it, and I said, so we used that screenplay when we came back to the movie company, and I talked to the main guy who was going to be producing. And I said, I realized we do need to bring in another screenwriter. Because at first he said, you can't get screenwriting credit. You'll get original content credit. Mm-hmm. And he looks after he read the screenplay, he's like, I don't think we need it. We don't need to bring in another screenwriter. This is great. we're going to use this one. So since then, I've written another screenplay because the content of the novel calls for 3 screenplays, and we are just like moving this thing along. More people have come in that are potential partners. And so I can't really say, but it's like so exciting. And I just keep giving it. The funny thing is, Mike, I have not been uptight about this for 1 second. Like there was a writer's strike and then an actor strike, and so at one point, Sony Affirm had bought the production company that gave us the offer. So there was this huge delay, and I'm like, that's when I said, I'm just going to write the screenplays while we're waiting. And that came through, and then a bigger offer came through. So it's like, I keep saying, this is for you, God, because the fable of Michaela, a fable is a story that teaches a moral, as defined. And, Michaela, when I decided on Michaela means God's good gift. Mm-hmm. So it's a story that teaches a moral about God's good gift. And that's what this entire journey, it's an adventure with all these amazing characters that, I'm in love with all these characters. They're just from all parts of the world. It's very, very fun. So we're excited about that. I'm
so proud of you. And you know what you're doing.
Thank you. Well,
you're living the book.
It's true. You
really are.
Yeah. Yeah. As a writer, you do that a little bit. You draw on your own life for the things you write about and other experiences and other lives around you. But it becomes sort of this compilation of something really fun. Yeah.
But if you didn't apply what you teach in that book, none of this would have happened.
No.
That's the beautiful thing about this is you're literally walking, talking example of what you're teaching in the book. If people just if they get the book, read it and learn it, and they pursue living their life the way you and Mark live your lives, this is the kind of success they'll have. This is the kind of joy they'll experience.
Yes, I think that's so true, Mike. And I am so grateful for it. I think one of our prayers every day when I pray is like, thank you for the awareness. Thank you for the awareness of you, God, and your, the Holy Spirit that is in each of us if we just wake up. The guidance that we can all get by asking and also connecting with all of these amazing other human beings and connecting with ourselves. We don't cherish ourselves enough. So yeah, it's exciting, and it's been exciting to be here with you today. So thank you for having me on as a guest.
Well, thank you for being here.
Yes, of course.
One thing I'll leave everybody with, we're really just God's vessel.
That's it.
That's really what we are. Yeah. And people need to read. Hold that book up again. People need to read Ask with an exclamation point.
Yes. Ask, the bridge from your dreams to your destiny. They will love it.
They will promise.
It just becomes one of those books that you just go through again and again. You go back to it when you're feeling, you know what, I need that reinforcement. It's such a great guide.
I promise you, it's a workbook for life. I promise you it is. And people need to treat it that way. They really do. It'll change their lives. I'm living proof of it. And you are too.
Yes, that's right.
Crystal Dwyer Hansen, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. This has been an amazing time. I knew it would be amazing. I knew it would fly by. My goodness gracious, we've been together for a while. Please tell Mark I said hi. I can't wait to see you guys. Thanks again.
I will. And take care. All right. Thanks, Mike. Enjoyed every minute.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at the Mike Litton Experience.